Hello and welcome to another episode of So Fly. My name is Mitch, and Aldo's not here because he's in Mexico. So he's down having fun with Kayla Lockhart. It's her trip hosted at Ascension Bay. Yilma's actually there too, and good friend Nick Kennedy, Demisha Dennis, Shelly's there as well. A bunch of friends hanging out in the saltwater, having a ball, catching all kinds of fish. But yeah, Aldo is away. So it is me today recording this intro. But of course, if you saw the title of the show, you know that we've got a special episode for you here where we sat down with actually Dave Stewart, the Wet Fly Swing podcast. It's been a long time coming. I think we tried in the past to kind of hook up and do a show together. But busy schedules, all that. So here we are today with a show with Dave Stewart from the Wet Fly Swing podcast. So it's going to be a good one. But before we get into it, of course, we have some updates and stuff like that to talk about. First and foremost, if you're listening here in Southern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, anywhere kind of near Toronto, April 19th, which is this coming Friday, we're doing SOTOS, Southern Ontario Trout Opener Social, which is very exciting. This is the third year in a row we're doing it, which is wild. Time is flying by. But come on down to SOTOS. We're raising money for the West Credit River brook trout, obviously. All of the money made goes back to support the Coalition for the West Credit River, which is working to be the voice for the brook trout and watch over them and protect them and do whatever they can to kind of help hold people responsible who are developing things near the town of Erin, which could affect, of course, the West Credit River brook trout population. So come on out April 19th, and you could win prizes. There's going to be a raffle. There's going to be, tattoos we're going to have again. We did that last year, and that was fun. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. An auction, of course, the Squirmy Wormy tie and derby's back. So come and tie the fastest Squirmy Wormy, and you could win a prize. So yeah, it's going to be very fun. It's in Toronto here at Third Place across from Civil Liberties. I believe the address is 875 Bloor Street West in Toronto, but I'm going to go to the SoFly website right now, sofly.ca, to just double check on that one because, of course, all the information's there. Yes, it is 875 Bloor Street West. It's parties starting at 7 p.m. in Toronto, so come on down. Beer by Muskoka Brewing and Left Field Brewery, and all kinds of sweet prizes. Reddington Rod and Reel, Coast Sunglasses, Filson Premium Outfitter bag. I mean, geez, Backcountry Skins prize pack. There's just so much stuff. So much stuff. Yeti prize pack even. I mean, we've got so much cool stuff. And of course, it's going to be fun. So come on down. SOTOS. Anyways, I hope everybody's enjoying the start to spring here. It is oh God, thank God it's spring. I don't know. It wasn't that bad of a winter, to be honest, like winter wise, but it was gloomy. It was depressing, as far as winters go. So I am feeling rejuvenated with this nice sunshine, longer days, warm weather, and of course the promise of trout fishing right around the corner. I feel like everybody's probably in that boat as well. So we did it. We did it, everybody. Good job. Well, let's get on to the show. Everybody enjoy today's episode with Dave Stewart, Wet Fly Swing Podcast, and stay tuned because, when Aldo gets back, we're going to be hearing all kinds of stories from Mexico. You know it. He's going to be very excited to tell us all of the fun things that happen. And maybe we'll hear from Yilma, and Nick and Demisha and Shelly. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. But on to the show. Thank you so much for listening. Dave Stewart from Oregon started the Wet Fly Swing podcast in late 2017. After getting positive feedback from a stranger online, he knew he had something good going. Since that day in 2017, he hasn't missed a week of publishing podcasts and has been able to let his passions for both fly fishing and podcasting continue to grow unfettered. Now he's got a team helping him and millions of podcast downloads. But we get the idea. It's just the beginning for Dave. Today, worlds collide with the meeting of podcast minds. Dave is on SoFly. Welcome to the show.
Amazing, guys. Thanks for having me. This is I'm super excited about this one. I've been following you guys for a long time, and I think there's not too many podcasts that have been out as long as we've been going, I think, right? I think we're at about the same time, I'm guessing, right, when you guys kicked it off?
Yeah. I don't, what is wrong with us, Dave? Why do we do this to ourselves? 8,
Yeah.
9 years. We've been doing this forever. Wet Fly, SoFly. Geez.
Yep.
It's fun.
It's amazing. I mean, I think for me, it's the conversations to just sit here and be able to chat about fly fishing and podcasting or whatever is pretty amazing. So I want to pick your guys' brain too to hear what keeps you going. But yeah, you
Oh
guys
man,
kick this off and tell me where we want to take it.
Yeah,
hell
it's
yeah,
wicked because Mitch always says what the great thing about podcasting is, and we'll get to this, but like if me Aldo just like messaged John Gierak was like, "Hey, can I talk to you for an hour and a half?" He'd be like, "No," but you're like, "Hey, we've got this podcast," and then all of a sudden you get some access to. I mean, I will say, it's pretty awesome how many people are just willing to come on the show. I really think
Yeah.
that's super
yeah,
because, like, you cold, you emailed us out of the blue. We emailed you out of the blue years ago. Like, and people get back to you, and it's really cool that people want to
Yep.
come on our shows, and like, man, Dave, like, you're what episode
Yeah.
575?
We're approaching 600, and
Wow.
that's
and these are
incredible.
full length interview episodes. These aren't one
Yes.
Yeah.
off 15-minute. They're full length. So yeah, we
All
got
of
it.
them are full length. That's crazy amount of podcasts. That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude.
Yeah. And then we have some bonus stuff too that we do. So there's a ton of shorter form stuff. So we're definitely over 600 already, but from the actual numbered, we're approaching 600.
Well, congratulations. That's friggin' amazing. That's a milestone right there.
Yeah.
Geez, that's wild. Well, we'll get into more podcast stuff for sure in a bit, and obviously that's going to be kind of the theme of today because it's not every day that you get to talk to someone else making a fly fishing podcast. You don't usually tell people you do that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay." That's like such a random thing to tell
Yep.
coworkers or people you meet for the first time. So it's going to be fun. I'm stoked that you're on.
Yeah. Me too.
But before we get into maybe all of the podcast stuff, why don't we just learn a bit more about like who you are as an angler, where you're from, where you grew up fishing, how you got into fly fishing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my story is basically my dad. I've heard this a lot
Mm,
because love to hear the first thing, asking my guests, the same thing. And, my
yeah,
dad was the guy that was the guide on the Deschutes River, our home river. He was one of the first fly anglers out on that river, born in 39, fishing it when he was in the 50s and all that as a kid. And he
yeah,
has these great stories about just the old times, right? So, I mean, I grew
yeah,
up around that. My dad was a teacher. And by about the time I was born, he had this fly shop in the garage, and it was his dream to have a fly shop. And he opened it about the time I was born. So I grew up around a fly shop. And by the time I was 12, I was on every guide trip with him in the summers, and I was, teaching clients how to cast. Right? It was like I was that little kid, kind of doing the thing. So yeah, I mean, I've always been around it. I always joke because when I started this podcast, I wanted to do it just on my own without telling
yeah,
anybody, with my dad. So I did. I really just did it, and I wanted to see if I could do it. And I didn't tell anybody who I was, and I just jumped in and started, like you
yeah.
said, cold calling people. And I started with Jim Teeney and a few people I knew. And 600 episodes later, we've interviewed Yvonne Chenard, Henry Winkler, the Fawns. Hey, right?
Oh,
We've got
Yo,
amazing. Yeah.
we've got we got some big episodes, and we got lots of people that some smaller names, but they're all amazing. I think
yeah,
every episode I've had out of those 600 are just pretty epic.
It's a testament to like, just how big this community is like globally, certainly in North America, and then also globally. Like there are so many people to talk to. Like every
yeah,
community, every river, every lake has its own microclimate of little heroes that,
Hmm.
whether they're authors, biologists, or anglers or guides that make up the fabric of this whole thing. And it's cool to kind of unravel that story by
Yeah, for
story.
sure.
What
Yeah.
was it about fly fishing that like kind of had you hooked those early days? I mean, obviously your dad was big into it, and that I'm sure had an influence. But like, what was it about the art itself?
I think it was just, I mean, it still is being on the river. I mean, I, joke about again the times when I was that kid. I'm not sure what age, but somewhere I was 11 or 12, and my dad would go on these guide trips, and he have a weekend trip, and then
Yeah,
he would take his clients back downriver, and he'd leave me in camp for like 2 or 3 days on my own in the remote canyon of the Deschutes, right? And so I just
Mm.
kind of I've always been around the river. I always love being on the river, kind of hanging out with the rattlesnakes and the deer and the fish, and just I'm a river, at the bottom. I love fly fishing, but I'm also like I love the river, the canyon, and the
yeah,
trips and the travel. And now we've created kind of this travel program around the podcast, and it's been really cool to now explore the rest of the
yeah,
world, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely,
so
yeah.
that's what hooked me. It wasn't necessarily the casting, the 10 and 2, I do love fly fishing, of course. I always have.
Mhm.
Um, but I just was always there. I remember catching my first fish somewhere along the line, and I was obviously hooked and got into steelhead eventually. And when you get a tug of a steelhead on the line, I eventually just went crazy on that. And I've been chasing steelhead around the Great Lakes up in Canada. So I've been a steelhead junkie for a good 15 years now, and it's been fun.
Silly question. Was that the inspiration for the name of the podcast?
Originally, the idea being, the wet fly swing was like a throwback to traditional. So it could be steelhead flies, but also just swing and trout flies, but really just traditional. I love that, and I still do. I love when I get these older guests on. I've had a few guests that passed away, they're these epic guys. So I love documenting the history of fly fishing as well. So every chance I get, I ran into Gary Borger at the fly fishing show and chatted with him. He's still going strong, this guy that's been doing the shows for, 50 years.
Yeah.
And I love that because, they paved the way for all of us and really people to learn, the fly fishing. So, it spurred there, but it's funny because now obviously we interview people from salt and all around the world and all topics. So, it will always be the wet fly swing, but we occasionally get that question like, hey, I don't know much about swinging flies. Should I be a guest on your podcast?
Right.
Right.
But that is where it came from.
Yeah, that's rad. Okay, so podcasting then, how'd you fall in love with podcasting?
Podcasting started with basically trying to get some extra income. That was kind of where, and so online business, and that's really where I started to learning about online business. That's how it started, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Early on, I started learning. I was trying to learn about how to do online business, and Pat Flynn was the first guy online. He was this guy, transparent, had his income report on his website, and I was like, man, there's actually cool people out there doing this. So I started my first blog. I started blogging and trying to make money blogging, and I tried everything, right? And so the story was 2 years of that went nowhere. And as soon as in 2015, I set a goal to I said, hey, I love listening to podcasts. I'm going to start my own podcast in 2 years. I just set a goal out there. I had no idea what it was going to be. And then 2 years later, I had launched the Wet Fly Swing blog, and it really wasn't getting a lot of traction. But as soon as I launched that first podcast, I started hearing from people that were like, Dave, this is awesome. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
And the first time online I'd ever had any feedback from a stranger, like you said, and I just knew right there, right away, I said, I've got something. I've never been no career in interview, any of that, but it was natural.
Yeah. Getting a bit of that kickback from someone random you don't know, obviously, is like fuel. You're like, oh shit, somebody actually liked that. Like maybe I do got something here.
I mean, Mitch, that's not too dissimilar. Like you had a blog called Drift, and then turned it into SoFly. Really, I mean, Mitch started the podcast with Yilma, and then I came along later. So
that's kind of just such a cool,
interesting, similarity there.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
There was the same for you. That's how
it was.
Yeah,
it was. There was fly podcasts when I was growing up that I listened to a few of them. One of them was called Fly Fishing on the Web, I think. It was this guy Jason and his brother-in-law Todd, I think. And those guys, man, I listened to all their stuff, and it was it was awesome. And then there was Ask About Fly Fishing.
Yeah.
Which
Roger Mabe, who's still going.
Yeah, man, that's and they called it internet radio, because it was this was quite old. They've been going for so long.
Yeah.
So I listened to those, but it was the podcast that really got me hooked on podcasts was Ricky Gervais' podcast. He did a podcast with Stephen Merchant and Carl Pilkington, obviously Stephen Merchant from The Office and Extras, and then Carl Pilkington, this guy.
Guys.
And I was like, oh my God, what an awesome thing, to be able to just have something like that. So yeah, I feel you, man. Just being inspired by their podcasts, and then getting to do it yourself, and then getting a bit of love, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, it's interesting too. We're both former teenage fly shop rats.
Mm-hmm.
We both worked in fly shops in Ottawa, and you're trying to digest some sort of information or look for even facts or blogs that's what you did. You went on forums, you went on blogs, early days internet, and I guess it made sense, and then but it's cool. You guys both had a blog and then evolved it into a podcast.
Blogs were very early internet, weren't they? Or I guess early content creator type of thing, right? Look where they've gone from blogs.
Remember the like live journal. I used to live journal my fishing.
Right.
That's so awesome.
Today I fished the Ottawa River. I used a woolly bugger, size
Right.
6 pollock.
Nice.
So awesome.
That's awesome.
I caught a bass.
Yeah.
Alert the
Yeah.
presses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's cool.
Okay, so when you started podcasting, was it like a crazy, like what was it like getting into it from a technical startup point of view? Like, did you have any kind of like knowledge of that stuff?
I had some mentor, Pat, again, back to Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas. I mean, some of these guys that were paving the way, and I think they're still going, and they were teaching podcasting. So I learned from them. Those were my guys. So I knew what I knew the mics and I knew the stuff. And I actually got into it. There was this period where there used to be a lot of audio, the kind of the soundboards and all that stuff. I wasn't in there. I mean, like right now I use a PodTrack P4 to record. That's my audio interface. Super easy. Anybody can use it. But so I didn't get into super technical. I mean, literally, I've always been a fan. Like, grab a microphone, plug it into your laptop, and you're good to go. I mean, that's really all it takes. I mean, the bigger struggle is to get your guests to actually have good audio. And you guys know that, right? That's always the challenge, especially in our space, because a lot of people don't have microphones. And I'd love to hear from you guys too, how you work that. But I know that's a challenge for us because it's always, you never know what they're going to be on.
Oh, big time, man. I mean, like, so you've always done your interviews online, right? Like even pre-COVID, like it was all online.
Always.
Yeah. Because like I remember COVID being a weird time for us because we're like, well, now we have to do everything over Zoom or something, and we kind of started trying to figure that out. And that's really when we started running into like mic problems and like internet connectivity and stuff. It's like, oh my God, you feel so bad because recording something and you're like, oh God, the internet's weird and you're just like sweating,
Totally. That's a great tip. That's why the Zencasters, the Roadcast, or the Riversides are so good because they're recording it locally. Like right now, right? This is going locally into my computer and then it's uploading to the cloud as opposed to Zoom going over the internet, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then you get that beautiful waveform. Yeah, we were kind of lucky. Like my background is in sound engineering. And but so what we were early days, we were lucky because we got access to a sound studio for free, which was great. And it was great for good audio. The challenge was getting, not all the guests live in Toronto or Southern Ontario. So it was great when we had guests from Southern Ontario because they'd come into town or they were already in town. We'd go to the sweet looking studio and we'd have really great audio and in a dampened room. But then you start meeting people from the global community and you're doing 2 shows where we do 2 shows a month. You do 2 shows a week. Like we were actually calling people.
Oh, you were? Yeah.
We were phoning, like when we first had Kayla, who is now a friend. We had Kayla Lockhart on the show the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jared, who started Flylords, like
we did that one over the phone.
We did those over the phone.
So how did you do it over the phone? So you literally had the phone. How were you recording it?
So we would patch. We'd patch them in through, like we had we're at the sound studio with the big.
Oh sure, yeah, like a
beautiful
radio
looking
show.
Beautiful looking soundboard, and we would patch them in.
That's
through
amazing,
that, which was hilarious.
Oh,
and
super fun, because it added a level of like, whoa. And it was in the CBC building, which is like the Canadian Broadcast.
Oh, wow,
Corporation.
legit.
Yeah, because that's just where the studio happened to be. So it's so weird because we're like a year or 2 into the podcast and we're like, yo,
here's the CBC.
What a connect.
They're like, we just at the CBC building, and people are like, what?
That is amazing, man.
It was funny, man. It was cool.
Yeah. And so that was an interesting, but I will say, these remote podcasting platforms have just unlocked the world. Because sound quality is like, oh my God, if it sucks, it's horrible.
I know. No, it's huge. It's been cool. And I've worked with a lot of podcasters out there in both, our space and others to help them get into it. And I love seeing more people getting into it. It's so cool now, right? Because anybody can literally do this. And you see I don't even know how many new shows are out there, but you see them popping up all the time.
Oh yeah.
I've always been a fan of the rising tide raises all ships. I think the more of us that are out there, the better it is for the community.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, why don't we talk a little bit about just like content wise? Like firstly, what do you think makes like a good fly fishing podcast? What gets you excited when you record?
Man, well, I have, God, I love that question. I've been doing a little work because every 100 episodes, we have a big episode. I tried to put something together, right? We had Joan Wolf on, I think in episode 100, and each time we try to do something This one, I'm really expanding out and trying to do a summary of some of our biggest guests. So I've been going through our back catalog and looking at like the consumption rates. I don't know if you guys look at that, but you can see, how long people are listening to the
Yeah.
episodes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you can see those ones that are highly engaged. So I've
Yeah.
got a list of those, and I could see which episodes are kind of our most engaged. And I think early on it was definitely the tips and tricks and names, right? Obviously bigger named people. You get, like you said, John Gierach on,
Yeah.
you're going to get more listens. But I really think, it is the stories. You hear the stories a lot, but people come for the topic, but they really stay for the host and the stories. You know what I mean? That's like, your people that listen to your show. They're coming for you guys, right? And the stories you guys are putting out there. Tips and tricks are awesome. Everybody loves those. Definitely. I love to mix in the tips and tricks, but I feel like whenever you can get that, I've had people cry on the show, right? You've had everything, right? I think those are always the things that really,
Yeah.
they're going to remember the stories. They're not going to remember okay, you got to use a tippet ring on your, your Euro, right? But
Yeah.
they're going to remember some really amazing story.
How many turns on that clinch knot?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
no,
feel you.
yeah.
It's more about like
Was
the
there a point
entertaining
where you
aspect.
started liking your own show? And this is a question because, like, when I started, my first episode with these guys was episode 17, and then started recording. In the beginning, I really hated the sound of my own voice.
Oh, your own voice.
And just other weird little things. And then after about 10 episodes, I really I even looked forward to listening to our own podcast, because sometimes when you're recording, there are times where you kind of, I'm going to say, black out.
Or you're
You
almost
forget
thinking about what
moments.
to say. Or
You're always trying to
you
think of
forget.
a question, or you're reading your notes, or you're looking something up.
Yeah, and you think you're doing worse than you are to that thing, like the public speaking, right? You're in front of the crowd. You think you're sweating and stuff's dripping off you, but nobody's noticing. Yeah.
Yep.
Was there a point where you enjoyed your own show more, or
I've always
or not?
listened to the show, and still to this day, you can't. We're doing 2-3 episodes, sometimes more a week. And I have a team of editors, a small team, and I still listen to every episode before it goes live. That's my last check, and I still love doing it because I'll do an episode with, whatever you name the guest, Landon Mayer, and it'll be like 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and I'll totally forget what the conversation was, and then I'll be listening to it again and be like, wow, because that's what happens. You guys probably don't see it as much, but when you're doing as much as we're doing, I forget lots, and maybe it's because I'm getting older too. But it's a lot of content, so I love listening to the episode because I'm kind of critiquing myself and seeing if my editors are still on track. Because that's another tip. Some of for podcasters out there, right? When I started, go back to our first episodes, there was no editing at all. It was totally, for the most part. Now, I've interviewed. We have another kind of a marketing podcast that I've done, and I've interviewed some really big. In fact, you mentioned we had a guy that created the public broadcasting NPR podcast. He's the guy that created that back in the day. I had him on the show.
Oh, cool.
And I asked him, what is the number one thing a podcaster can do to make their show better? And he said, by far, every minute of editing you do will make your show better. And so we edit. We don't edit like we're not, moving stuff around and shit, but we're really cleaning it up. Like you don't notice it, but if you go to the podcast, it's really clean. We're trying to make our guests sound better, right? Because if somebody's stumbling and doing too much, it's just annoying. And that's always my test. Like when I listen, if it sounds like if I'm getting annoyed or getting distracted from the content, then it's time to fix that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where and that's a big track that I'm talking, but I think editing is key. And the idea being with editing is that the better you do, the listeners don't even realize you're editing. It just sounds like a clean episode.
Yeah, a nice clean chat.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, the NPR format. Like what they did with their stuff is wild. Like the storytelling is really polished.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's a great guest to talk to. How do you go about getting your guests? What do you do? What's your system?
Man, my system is wild. My system is wild. I pretty much, I've done everything. You name it. I'm trying to think. Well, here's a good one. Henry Winkler, right? The Fonz, right? This was about as easy as it gets. I went on to, here's another tip. IMDb Pro, right? So it's all the actors, all the famous people are on this thing. You can pay a monthly fee, and now you get access to all their managers and their numbers. I went on there. I found there's a bunch of famous fly anglers, and I've always loved Henry Winkler and stuff. So I reached out, and literally, I think it was the next day, his manager got back to me and said, "Let me check with Henry." And after that, he said, "Yeah, let's do it."
That's amazing.
Yeah, that
Well, we're
quick.
definitely doing that. We're gonna
Yeah.
for sure trying to get the fawns on.
Yeah,
That's
you got to
so
get
cool, man.
Yeah, and he's a
Yeah.
total big angler, and so there's
I know
that, and
he's always see him
You always see him with like huge trout.
posting trout pics in Montana. It's awesome. I love
It is
it. I
awesome.
love it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. Yeah.
he's the man. So, but a little bit of everything. I mean, I think I just have a list, a massive
Yeah.
list of people, and I just kind of throw it out
Yeah.
there, and then by email, and again, I have a little small team, so I'm not really doing as much of that, the outreach, but it's just it's a constant thing. It's just like getting sponsorships and anything. You gotta it's always going. You got your
Yeah,
for
pipeline,
sure.
right? You got this
Yeah.
pipeline of people, and some people are going to say no. Most will say yes, but the
Yeah.
bigger problem is that a lot of times people maybe they get so much email they just miss it, and you got to just keep following up
Yeah.
with them over time. Not to be a spammer or anything, but I'll send out email, give them a month or two, check back with them. If nothing, I'll check back a year later. I'm not too worried. We do so much that I know eventually we'll probably get these people, so I'm never really aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And like, you never know, like I'll look at my own personal DMs sometimes, like message requests once a month, because you
Yeah.
kind of forget they're there.
Yeah.
And it's like 99% of it's junk. And then one's like, hey, can you help me out with, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I should have responded to that.
I
But
got one.
it just gets filtered into the junk, and it's
Yeah.
like, what are you
Totally.
supposed to do?
I got one just yesterday. It's so funny because the guy reached out, and it was chocolate something, and I was like, "Wow, what is this?" And so I looked at it. And he said, "Hey, I just checking my emails. I missed your email. You sent it, but I definitely want to be on the podcast." I was like, "Wow, who is this guy?" And I looked at the date, and I sent it to him back in like November of 22.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Like, right? Somehow he
Yeah.
went back through his spam and just went through all of his spam emails and
And
found
replied.
mine. And then, you know what I mean? There you go. 2 years later.
Amazing.
He was really busy, and then he had like a window and he's just like, "Oh,
Yep. There you go.
that's wild. That's so funny." Yeah, we've had that too, where it's like a few years of like once a year I'll email someone because I never hear, and then year 5 they're like, "Yeah, for sure." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's awesome,
Yeah.
but you never know, right? People are like
Yeah.
just kind of whatever, busy and stuff.
For
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
Love it.
Are there
Uh,
certain like fishy topics you'd prefer to talk about, or is this kind of at this point it's all good?
I love everything. You
Yeah.
name the topic, the species. I mean, we just did one on bowfin. We got the
Yes.
Mississippi.
Lake
We have a big
Champlain
concert.
episode.
Yeah, exactly. You guys know that's up in your neck of the woods. I mean, the Great Lakes. We've
Mm-hmm.
been doing Great Lakes, and we've done some transition. Now we have our own kind of gurus are hosting the show now. I've expanded a little bit, so it's not your typical network type of podcast network. But I have a few people like Jeff Liskey. He's hosting our Great Lakes show now.
Oh, cool.
And and we've got we got a littoral zone with Phil Roy. So we're kind of doing that a little bit. I'm trying to mix it up so it's not just me always doing, trying to keep it fresh.
For sure.
So, but I'm all over the place. I mean, you name the topic. I would be over in Europe for all of, half the shows if we had enough, capacity. Because I really just want to travel the world and I want to interview everybody. Like that's my goal.
I was surprised to hear on that redfish episode that you had never been red fishing.
There's a lot of species I have never. I've got a small family as well with some little kids, so I don't get out as much as I would like, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the reason this travel program has been so great, because it's allowed me to kind of get around the country a little bit. But I mean, redfish, there's so many species on my bucket list, right? I mean, probably like you guys. But I know you guys have been traveling. I mean, you guys have been out doing some stuff, right? I mean, you the last few years you've been going for it, right?
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky for sure.
No kids.
Yeah, I mean, not that we don't work for it, but we don't have kids or mortgages.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Just car payments and
take advantage of the time you can, right? So it's been I mean,
exactly.
That was always kind of the goal too for us, was like just be able to kind of use this to travel, like use this as a means of getting places and seeing people and making those connections so that we can make travel easier and possible and blah blah blah.
Yeah, originally it was about traveling our home province, just seeing more of it, because we admittedly, Canadians I feel are pretty well traveled, but poorly traveled in their own country.
Right.
If that makes
a pretty dope country.
So we want to explore our own back door first, and then which is kind of cool. Why don't you talk a little bit about that travel program? I noticed it on your website. Like it's like a host. It seems like there's an educational element and a hosted trip element as well.
Yeah, it's both. There's kind of a lot going, but what I typically do is we got all these episodes, all these great anglers. I reach out to those that we really resonate with, and they're places that our listeners also resonate with. And we just say, hey, do you want to put this together? And so, for example, Jeff Liskey, the Great Lakes, I knew he was the guy. And I said, hey, Jeff, how about we do a hosted trip? So we essentially just we do these giveaways around it, right? So we do a big event and we do this and we give away a one slot to go on an all expense, all inclusive trip. And we tried to keep them in the US or the lower 48, at least Canada included. But below $3,000. So the price is reasonable. So it's not a ton of money. So they're basically like 4 nights, 3 days, all inclusive. I've been building these trips with our gurus around, because there's not a lot of lodges in some of the areas down here. And so we just, whether it's an Airbnb, whatever, we build this trip and then we do a giveaway. Somebody wins it. And then we sell 6 slots, like a hosted trip. And then I go out there with the 6 people and we have this awesome, just experience with some, a small group of listeners. And it's allowed me just to connect more with them and then get around the country and check out some of these spots, connect with our gurus. And so we've been hitting, we haven't done a trip up in your neck of the woods yet, but we've had definitely some listeners. We've got our audience is about 8%, Canada. So we've got a nice chunk. And again, I want to get up there, but yeah, there's just so many places to go to. We're doing some stuff coming up in May. I'm going to be heading to Virginia to do our trout school. I'm going to be heading to the Driftless. We're doing an event in the Driftless this year for like dry fly school. Nice. We call it our school because we have a whole website built around that, the School of Fishing. And this is where our educational stuff, kind of everything is there. So we're doing courses as well and webinars. So all of our super gurus come back on and do webinars, and then we record those, and now they're on the platform, more on the school. And then we, over time, will eventually sell them. Nothing's for sale yet, but we're working on building the content.
You guys are doing a lot of stuff over there. Holy smokies. Is this your full-time gig? Like, is this like, this is
it's a full,
everything?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the biggest, I mean, the school is a total separate business actually. And I do some other things, some online marketing and, like I said, sponsorship, like I teach some of that stuff. So there's a lot, but the bulk is for sure the sponsorship we do through the Wet Fly Swing podcast, right? Yeah. Because the sponsors that we have, that's a bulk of the revenue. Yeah. So it's, for sure. It's a whole model that I've kind of learned from, again, the number one tip I always tell people that I've started doing the last few years is invest in yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest tip. I started spending money paying business coaches and other people to teach me how to do all this stuff. Yeah. Just like guiding, right? You want to get good at fly fishing, pay a guide. That's the biggest tip, right? Spend some money and it's good. Exactly. So that's what I've been doing. And it's been really cool because now we're at a place where we're just doing all this stuff. We've kind of amped everything up a bit.
That's cool, man. Dang. Wow. A full-time gig. You turned it into that. What were you doing before that? Or
I've been doing a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I've done, I mean, I've done everything from
kind of world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, from, we talk about restoration, conservation. I mean, that's always been a big focus. Like right now we're, like I said, the Mississippi Valley Conservancy. Every event we do, we focus on a nonprofit and try to promote that. Of
course.
The concert. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, my interests are very wide, and but the biggest thing for me right now, it always comes back to the kids. How do I get out more and do the stuff I love, but make more of a contact and get them out too? Because to be honest with you, that's one of the biggest challenges with these kids. You guys don't have kids yet, but when you do, you'll realize, man, the screen time and stuff, it's not as easy to get them out fishing like me. Remember, I grew up around the water. Well, it's a little bit more of a struggle for them. But so those are my goals. I mean, when it comes down to it, for me, it's how do I get my kids out and get on the water more?
Do that when you do get them out, do they enjoy it?
They love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
they do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
They're just not they're not casting the super tight loop yet. They can cast pretty well actually for 10 and 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
But, and I haven't put any pressure on them. For me, it's just like that we get out there and we have fun outdoors and do our river trips. And
for sure.
Eventually, if they get into it, they're going to love it. And if not, it's all good.
Yeah. If you're yelling tight loops, they're probably going to hate it. Right.
Yeah.
I feel like
you got a microphone in your hand.
I did try that. I will say that I did try to get them. I was kind of like, hey, how about we try a little podcast? What do you guys think about getting on the show? And I actually have another podcast. This is probably no surprise to you guys. I have multiple podcasts, but I have a podcast called the Family Tracker Podcast where I interview my family members.
Oh, cool.
And so the goal is to have this podcast documenting our whole family history, not only long term, but yeah, so that's another
Dang,
one
what
of
a
my little
project.
projects.
That's
Yeah,
the cool
that's
thing
cool.
about podcasting. It lives as a
Yeah.
oh my god, almost
Forever,
like
like a little time
it
capsule.
lives as a resource and time capsule that you can go
Yeah.
back to. Like, we have people listening, as I'm sure you do. Like, it's like, oh, somebody just listened to. All of a sudden, like 1 month, you'll look at your stats. You're like, episode 20
Yeah,
got 100 listens for some reason this month.
Exactly.
It's like, why? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that people can go back there. So the family podcast is it's a really neat
Yeah,
idea.
it's cool.
Yeah.
My grandfather would love that. He took like a picture every 8 minutes of everybody.
Oh, wow.
Just documenting our whole lives.
Nice.
Which is kind of fun to look back on,
It's
Yeah.
nice to have that. Yeah, your kids will be stoked,
Totally.
one day to have
Yeah.
Did
all
you guys
those,
have fishing in your like your family? Do you guys both have the fishing bug?
the family, the
Yeah.
only person in my fam that does fish is my uncle, but he was living, in a different city than me when I was growing up. But I knew he was fly fishing, and I got into fishing as a kid. Just I think like a lot of us, just kind of like catching sunfish, and was like, this is so fun for some reason. And then eventually I was like, what is this fly thing? This my cool uncle's doing. What is that? Bamboo rods? What the hell's going on over there? And so yeah, he was like, okay, I'll show you some things. But yeah. Although, what about you? Was it your grandpa? Your grandpa was a big angler.
Yeah,
right?
nobody fly fish, but my grandfather was a big angler and hunter. The hunting kind of went away
Yeah.
pretty much before I was born, but it really went away after, and because he used to raise like GSPs and
Oh wow.
and breed them and stuff, and he loved pheasant hunting and
Yeah.
duck hunting, but that kind of went away, and then he never got into fly fishing, but he loved fishing, and so we would go fishing,
Yeah.
and then obviously Ottawa's an awesome place for access to water.
Yeah.
3 rivers run through it. You're super close to most. I mean, I could just bike to the Ottawa River's not a small river, pretty
No.
big.
Right.
And it's got everything in it aside from trout. It's
Yep.
got like
Well, a
bass,
couple times a year.
Yeah, that's true. Bass, pike, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Muskie, carp,
Yeah.
gar,
Everything.
every fun thing a 10-year-old kid would like want,
God.
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, cool, panfish nonstop.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what possessed my mom to one birthday, my 10th birthday, she was at Canadian Tire, which is
Exactly.
Walmart for
Oh, yeah.
all intents and purposes. There's a Fenwick kit of fly rod, whatever, that infamous bee fly that I think everybody.
Oh yeah, the bee fly, right?
So Canadian.
Yeah, with
Tire.
the chenille deal.
The chenille
Yeah.
bee with the red wing for some reason, and
That's it.
and that she was like, I don't know, he likes fishing, I'm buying this.
Oh, that's sweet.
I don't know.
So
And it
your
was
mom
awesome.
got you that before you had tried fly fishing.
Yes, I didn't even know
That's
what
sweet.
it was. And then
That's sweet.
3 years after, a fly shop opened in Ottawa. One of her
Oh.
friends, again, to tie it back to my mom, one of her best friend, for my birthday, just brought this little fly box full of like the most beautiful flies I had ever seen at the time, because Ottawa's not, it's a fly fishy place, but
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my God, where do these flies come from? They're like, oh, there's a fly fishing store like 5 minutes from your house. And I was
Oh,
like,
those-
what?
Yeah.
And it was the Orvis,
God.
an Orvis store
Oh,
that
it
opened
was.
in Ottawa.
Were those all tied by
Amazing.
Cam upstairs?
No, they were just like
Just regular
Orvis
flies.
flies, but they
Yeah.
were still at the time like, I had never seen, I'd seen Canadian Tire, Walmart flies,
Yeah.
and then that just opened the whole
Yeah,
world.
that's it.
At that point, it was
Well-
like, whoa, dude.
That's awesome. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? I'm just curious on your shows.
Yeah.
Do you guys have one big episode guest that you had on that was like kind of epic?
This was our question for you coming up next.
I know. I gotta throw it back. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Aldo?
Actually, I was actually thinking about musing on this earlier today, and I was like,
Yeah.
I liked a lot of the guests that were sort of fly fishing adjacent. Of course, everybody who comes on the show,
Yeah.
fly fishes or is at least a biologist.
Yeah.
And it was Mark, professor here at the University of Toronto, and he's an author. Mark Kingwell was one of my favorite interviews. He was, obviously he's a professor of philosophy at University of Toronto, and he writes for the Toronto Star, I thought that interview was great. I thought he was great, and his story was cool. And
He's such a cool dude.
He wrote a book about the philosophy of fly fishing, and that's why we had
Catch
him
and
on.
release.
Oh, there you go.
and it was called Catch and Release, which is an amazing book if people want to consume it. And my background's in food and bev. He also does a lot of cocktail writing, so it was, for me, it was an added layer, But I thought that was really fun to speak to somebody who isn't part of the industry, obviously enjoys fly fishing, wrote a book about it, but from a completely different perspective. Had nothing to do with like you said, clinch knots and whatnot. It was about how his family interacted with the sport and how he got into it, and it was great. It was great. I really loved that. For me,
awesome. Yep.
Yeah, he's
Very
dope.
cool.
Mark Kingwell's awesome. It's hard to pick like a fave, obviously.
I know.
Like that's but I feel like if I had to pick, I would say like Mark Kingwell definitely is one of them. I love the show we did with Monty Burke, obviously the author of Lords on the Fly.
He's cool.
Yeah.
He's
such a cool dude, and like
he is.
his book's awesome, and just hearing about the history of tarpon and homosassa, it was just so fun,
Crazy story.
Monty's awesome. Yeah, so crazy, dude.
And he's got a cabin on the Marguerite, that
was cool. That was a good show. But honestly, I also really like James Bond, who's like a local guy here that told us all about building bamboo rods. That was really fun.
James Bond. He's got
his name's James Bond too. I know he's
it's kind of funny.
He's just slinging bamboo rods.
Yeah.
But I think honestly, the recent show we have coming out soon with Deck Hogan, that might be one of my favorite shows.
Deck's a stud. Yeah, Deck's awesome.
He's such a nice guy, and he was just so fun to talk to him about steelheading and stuff. Because I love the chats about the passion for fly fishing and like the philosophies of it and like why people love it, what they love about it, all that stuff. And what was cool about Deck was you're talking to him about that stuff, and then because he's so hardcore and knowledgeable, he'll talk about that stuff passionately, philosophically, in that realm. And then he'll kind of come down to like, because when you're in 3 feet of water catching just a fresh steelhead out of this, and you want to get half swing, and he goes really technical all of a sudden, and you're just like, whoa! So you're like going from like this to like then the technical stuff, and then back to so it was cool because he's just such a passionate angler. I feel like that is. It's exciting when people are like so into something, anything. It's just like fun to feel that energy. So I don't know. It's hard to pick a fave, but
that's cool that he's still in it, because we had him on way back at the Wayback Machine on the podcast, and he told the story about how he was up in Canada with his family, and he had like the truck loaded, the brand new truck, the trailer with all the goods, and somebody stole his entire everything while he was on the vacation.
Oh my God!
And I was like, dude,
I can relate.
I know. God, it's like, whoa. But so I always, there's so many. Deck's the man. That's a great.
Deck was really good. That was, it's a good point, Mitch. Yeah, he was talking about the mist on the Skeena.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's like, but then when you're at a 45-degree angle, and you're like, holy shit! I'm like, this like this romantic world, and then you like kind of snap into realizing who you're talking to for a second.
That's what was so fun about it. It was just like the perfect balance of like info tech and then just passionate entertaining talk.
We'll bounce it to you. What do you have a standout or a recent standout or maybe one that like a landmark podcast? You're like, wow, I've got way better at this after doing this show.
That's another good question. I think that a recent one I did, which I've been wanting to get it for a long time, was Tim Rajeff. Echo fly rods.
Oh, family. Cool. Yeah.
I've been wanting to get him for a while, and he's such a cool guy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing was I did the California show just a couple of weeks ago, and the Golden Gate Casting Club is right outside in San Francisco. So I took the kids by the casting club, which I'd been wanting to do and that's where Tim grew up. And he's obviously his brother was a 20-year champion caster.
Which what Steve. A cool place.
Yeah, it was amazing. Unbelievable. Like, the historian was there. The historian was there. He, at the time when we were there, he walked me through gave me the whole, he's going to come on the podcast to share the story, but yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so, that would be a good one.
Yeah. So that was good. So Tim, and he just broke down, I always try to get tips. I always try to have some focus, I never want to go into it and just kind of BS the whole time. I always want to have some little focus because I like to have nuggets, and he broke down just some casting tips, and I even had some people got feedback. He said, oh man, I wish you would have really talked to Tim about the double haul a little more, because I've been really struggling with that. So hopefully we'll get him back on. We'll talk double haul, but you know, Tim was awesome. Of course, going back to Joan Wolfe, I mean, that was epic. She was, you know, Frank Moore, who is a guy down in our rivers, North Umpqua, famous steelhead angler, a famous conservationist who protected this basin down there. And I went to, it was in person at his house. He was like 90 something.
Amazing.
Shook his hand in person. I mean, he literally almost crushed my hand. He was still so strong. He was a World War II veteran, stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Jeez.
You know, and I was just sitting there with this guy, this bigger than life guy. And so, you know, that's the sort of stuff that gives you goosebumps.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting to spend time with people like with such interesting backgrounds, you know, like, and you're like, wow, this is actually like, this person is like legit, you know, and you're just like hearing their stories and feeling their vibe. It's cool. It's like a weird energy that podcasting is unlocked for so many of us.
Yeah. Well, I do have a funny story about it'll hit Henry because you got to go back to Henry. So on the Henry Winkler episode, I asked him the question, you know, it was a great episode, you know, definitely we could throw a link out there to it. But I said, Henry, down throughout, he was talking about how he loved fishing and stuff. I said, Henry, you've done all this stuff. You've happy days. You've just been, why not just retire and just fish the rest of your days? You obviously love fly fishing. He looked at me and it was on a video, and he said, why would I quit right now? I love what I'm doing. I just won an Emmy with Barry. I'm on top of the world in his, you know, so he literally was saying, even though he's in his mid 70s, he is at top, you know, at the top of his game. And he was just like, why would I quit now? I am loving acting. And so I didn't really think about that. Right. But that's one of those things, like, that's his thing. I mean, the guy has this really crazy story where he had a speech impediment. He literally can't really read that well. And so, but he's the Fonz, right? And he's this bigger than life guy. So I don't know, that those sorts of stories are way above fly fishing. And I think those are the ones that resonate with me. You know, I mean, we all love fly fishing. We all come for the fly fishing, but those bigger stories are what keeps me going.
Yeah. I'm with you there for sure, man. 100%.
Was there, just going back to my other question, was there a few guests or a landmark episode, and it might have been a bad episode that you were like, okay, this made me better? It could have been a bad thing where like a realization, like, oh shit, I gotta get better at this, you know? Or you're like, wow, that went really well. Why did that go well? And then you kind of self-reflected and we're like, let's do that again.
There was. And actually it goes back to the editing. I don't remember the exact episode, but you know, there's this little thing that they say, you're not a true podcaster until you get your first 1-star review, you know? And so part of the, you know, the part of this thing is, you know, these stars, right? You get reviews. It's actually good to have people on both ends, right? You kind of want some, because that means you have an opinion out there. And so I remember getting that first 1-star review, and I started really reading the reviews, and I started seeing that, you know, there was some stuff I was doing that was a little bit of annoying, you know? And so I started changing that. I started like getting better at that in my interviews, either taking it out, editing it, just trying to be better. So I started, and that really got me just from some people with feedback. I mean, people reach out to me. I've had lots of people reach out over the years and be like, Dave, I'm going to give, because I love the podcast, I want to give you some good feedback. Quit doing this, you know, or do that. Right. Or so that's the stuff, you know, when you're getting that direct feedback, I listen to all that. And I try to, of course, you're going to have haters out there for sure. Occasionally they're just going to be, you know, whatever.
You suck, you know,
exactly.
like
all that stuff. Yeah. But for the most part,
our inbox, that's our inbox.
Yeah, that's our
everything in our inbox.
Fuck you guys.
It's just like, too many
why
tips.
Do we suck?
No.
Please.
Can you at least tell me why?
No, you guys are kicking butt out there. I mean, I'm really interested in your thing too, with the fact that you lost your, you know, I mean, you lose your co-host. That's a pretty epic change too, I'm guessing.
Well, especially because like Yilma was so like, he was such a big part of the initial idea of the podcast. Like when I met Yilma, I was like, man, this guy's like a really weird dude in a good way. Like he's a funny, interesting person that says stuff that's like, where the hell did that come from? You know? And there was another guy too, Gab, who was kind of the same. Like Gab's just this gregarious, like Quebec fellow that just would say funny stuff, you know? So it's like, they were fun to have on the podcast because they were just like weird, quirky, all over the place kind of guys that also were very passionate about fishing. But I think, you know, like as like 8 years in, as the show evolves and stuff, you know, it was obviously is a bummer, but I feel like it's one of those things where I don't know, like Aldo, like, man, me and Aldo have been doing this now for so many years as well. Like 2017 was basically like we started 2016, Aldo joined 2017. So it's like Aldo's been here the whole time, you know? And I think just the friendship that we formed, you know, is just it comes through whether Yilma's there or not. You know, obviously it sucks losing a third voice and a friend from the show, but I mean, the good thing is he's still going to be around fishing. So like we're going to be talking Yilma stories on this podcast for many years
Yeah.
to come, I think.
Definitely.
I was liked that he just jumped into, like, as he started fly fishing the same day he started the SoFly podcast. So,
Wow.
like he was learning from, I mean, on his end, what a great opportunity to learn from all these people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, in Yilma's first 2 years, he's, been in Northern Ontario, caught a 50-inch pike, all these amazing things.
Yeah.
But at the other time, like, how vulnerable is that? Like you said, the internet is, is not starving for haters. And, when, you post a picture of like, Yilma learning, or like his cast doesn't look good and he gets roasted, it's like, man, like kudos to him, because it's like, he just started fly fishing and he's putting himself out there like
That
in a
is
very
amazing.
public way.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of always really interesting to have, to have that perspective on the
Oh,
show. Because
wow.
like we said, Mitch and I grew up fly fishing. We worked in fly shops. We know who, it sounds silly, but we know who Deck Hogan is, and we know these books and these fly pattern names and places and stuff, and he didn't. And to get thrown into it on the show I thought was a really cool perspective.
That's
to answer
really
your question, I don't know. I've ran restaurants for so long, and teams change all the time, and it sucks when you lose really great key members. But you thankful for the time, especially when it's positive. And I think what it did for us is, like you said, like you always like having those little nuggets of takeaways. I think for us, it's made us look inwardly, and like in a way, I still think we haven't just started, but I still feel like we're still
2.0, baby.
have just scratched the surface,
exactly.
and we've kind of arrived. Like we like our even little things. We like our audio setup. We like the format, and it was just about tightening up and making sure each episode was a little bit more poignant in a specific topic, because it got a bit formulaic, like about like we would have people on and we'd be like, oh, how'd you get into fly fishing? What was the first fish you ever caught?
It was too much the same.
And it was like that should be on shows, but maybe 2 to 5 minutes, not 30. And then like let's focus on a subject, which is why we're excited to talk to you, because we wanted to talk about fly fishing podcasts and what you thought was compelling content, because it's interesting to me, because I think you're right. Like you could get, there are millions of tips and tricks for every type of fishing, so like, how do you make a show about not just that?
And I think the biggest thing, and I always say, going back to some of those podcasting, I mean, it's like you have your notepad, right? I always have set questions, whatever, 10, 8, 12 questions. But the best episodes are always the ones where I don't ever look at those questions. And I just, somebody, you talk to them, they ask you something, and you just vibe, you just off of what they say, and you start going down some tangent, right? And you just take it down. So I feel like those are always the best episodes, whenever it's like a casual conversation, and people are learning. They're just hanging out with us, right? I mean, I think we've been doing that a little bit. We've just kind of been chatting here, and I got a couple of nuggets to give everybody before we head out of here. But and I think you guys have some stuff too to pick my brain on. But no, I mean, I think that like today, I just love just talking, whether it's like this we're doing today or talking to some expert super guru. It's always fun for me.
Yeah. What are your podcast dreams looking forward? Any big plans and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this thing we're doing with the school is a huge, big part of this, because, the plan is to create more of this travel, we're doing some trips, but we want to start expanding out and going across the pond and doing trips to all these lodges and, Norway and you name the place. So I just haven't had the capacity to do that. But I think as we kind of keep building this out, we're going to get there. Also, this podcast network we've created, where we have these kind of some of our gurus that are hosting shows, has been really interesting. And we just launched one with Brian Niska. He's our Skeena Spay guy. He's got the Skeena Spay Lodge, and he's hosting In the Bucket podcast, right? So we have, it's kind of a unique thing, right? Because it's not their own feed. It's within the Wet Fly Swing feed, but he's hosting it. So he's interviewing these other guys, and it's going great. And so I think we're going to keep doing that. And I don't know if we're going to get to a network someday, but the idea being is, to just be the biggest, outdoor network in the world, right? In the planet. Like
Yeah.
set your dreams high. We want to
Why
just keep
not?
building this thing that's,
Why not?
and doing more of this, right? Just working with people
Yeah.
like you guys and other podcasters. And that's my dream, is just to keep getting bigger in that we're serving more people. We're helping more people get into fly fishing, get into conservation, and then we're having more fun along the way. That's the big goal.
I love it. Okay. Mitch's Fishies 5 time?
Well, before we do the last 5 questions that we ask everybody, what were some of those little nuggets, if we didn't touch on them
yes.
already?
Oh yeah. I was just going to give you this nugget. We're doing and we'll put the link out at, I guess wherever you guys think. Wetflyswing.com/SoFly. I was going to put a link out there just so people, if they want to get this PDF download, which I'm working on right now. But basically, I'm taking, like I said at the start, those top most engaged episodes, which are most people listen to the most, and we're taking nuggets out of each of those, like the best tips. Because what I'm going to be doing is putting together some top tips, but then also kind of an intro to fly fishing, because we're going to be doing some shows with other podcasters in the outdoor space that aren't fly fishing exactly. So I'm going to be doing the road show on those as well, trying to help get the word out to get new anglers into it. So yeah, I've got some nuggets, and these are kind of like top tips and takeaways. Now maybe I could just touch on a couple of those. And these are just highlighting episodes. Want me to jump in real quick?
I'd love it.
We'll pop everything that, like, whatever link, whatever, it'll
Throw
all
it
be
on
in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
good.
if you're watching on YouTube, just check out the description. If you're watching, if you're listening on the audio only version, it's in the show notes.
Yeah, and this will be a real easy, just a PDF. You can just grab it and see all of them, because I'm just going to touch on a few, but we're going to have a list of all of these episodes that people can check out. But a few of the tips are, and we've said a few of these are like the all-time tips, right? What have you heard most about when you say, hey, what's your best tip on fly fishing, whatever, or, as your conversations? I mean, get a guide. I'm not sure about you guys, but that's always one big one that comes up. It's like, I've heard that so many times by so many people, like it's going to save you. So that's one. Observe, be observant, slow down on the water, right? When you come up to the river, instead of just jumping out there and start casting, take your time from the carlot, see what's hatching, right? Be observant, slow down. We've had some entomologists, so that's another kind of big tip. Practicing, Tim Rajeff, I mentioned, practice your back cast. We had this great episode with Ed Jaworowski, episode 233, and Ed broke down, the cast. And so, but again, you want to be practicing before you're on the water. Like me, I've always been, I'm on the water, I'm practicing my cast, I'm practicing my spay cast, but really you should be doing that before you get on the water. Or if you go on the water, just practice your casting and don't think about fishing, right? So those are some high level tips. We've got a bunch of other things that we can also put in this link, but we've got a couple of episodes from like Kelly Gallup. We've had him on a couple of times, which some of these episodes have been listened to more than 100%, right? So people are coming back and re-listening to these things. So Kelly had this episode back in 52, which was streamers. He talked about finding where you find fish, where people are stepping on the fish, kind of in the inside seams. We had Devin Olson. We have a great episode with him with Euro Nipping. Again, he talks about a number of things there. But I'm gonna keep it short. I just want to say there's going to be a bunch of quick tips and takeaways from our best episodes, so people can just quickly say, okay, what are the best of the best say are some of the best tips, and we'll have it in that little PDF, just as a kind of a little easy freebie to give people on the way out.
Hell yeah, that's great.
I love that.
Yeah, super handy and informative, and a good way to make use of your back catalog, right? That's a great idea.
Slow down's a great tip, because like
it's kind of the biggest thing.
Amount of people I see just like get to the river and just go right.
Well, you're like,
I know
it's
like
fish.
It's almost like a stereotypical thing,
Yeah. Do you guys think you're more? Would you consider yourself a better kind of fisherman or a better like fly caster?
Well, I'm definitely not a better fly caster.
That's a great question.
I would say I'm probably...
You're a pretty good caster, Mitch.
Well, thank you, my friend. I would say I'm probably... I mean, there's so many ways you can define what makes a good angler.
Right. I know.
I think...
is it their entomology? Is it the water hydrology knowledge? Is it, time on the...
Yeah.
I think I'm a better angler than I am a caster.
Yeah.
And that's certainly proven to me every time I go to the salt.
Yeah.
But because I catch fish, but sometimes catch like shit or cast like shit. But no, I think I'm Yeah, I think I'm a better angler. I think something that I never really got into the entomology is super interesting. I get, and I understand it all. Um, for me, I was always really tried to understand reading water. And every time I
Yeah.
got surprised by a fish, like, oh, I didn't think it would live there. And then I'd start thinking, well,
Right.
why did I think that? And then the more people we talk to, and
Yeah.
even like most recently Deck, talking to that whole theory of like find the stream within the river,
Yeah.
and trying to learn how to read water. And now I'm kind of obsessed with, I am obsessed with saltwater fishing and understanding. I'm at a very basic understanding of tides and
Yeah.
where to find fish there. And it's just
Right.
cool. I really I enjoy that. I
That is
enjoy
cool.
reading
That is
water.
cool.
I really enjoy that. And
Yep.
whether it be a river, lake, or ocean, stream, pond, whatever, I
Yep.
really enjoy.
Do you know what I
that.
think makes a good angler is that desire to keep learning about stuff and pushing yourself to figure it out, So I feel like in that regards, I'd probably be a better angler because I am just forever learning. And I'm kind
Yeah.
of willing to accept that that's me, like in terms of my angling persona, it's like the guy still figuring shit out forever.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't really aspire to ever be like, oh
The
man,
the
that's
the
the brown
perfect
trout
cast.
dude. Man, that guy knows everything about the brown trout and you know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the chase of the knowledge and learning people that dedicate their lives to this stuff because there's a lot of them,
I know.
that's exactly the kind of people we like to have on the podcast. People that are just like
Exactly. Yeah. You want
obsessed
those
with a
people. You
fish.
want those
Just
obsessed
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
totally, because they're so
Yeah.
interesting, to sit around and
I
just
know.
think about brook trout all the time and
Yeah.
their habits. It's like it's pretty cool when you get to talk to people like that really
or
know
people
Yeah.
that
that stuff.
snorkel steelhead rivers and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
Exactly.
totally.
love those people. Those are the
Yeah.
people we love. And
Yeah,
I
That's
always like
sweet.
this idea of just going back to I know it may not be exactly what Isaac Walton was thinking when he titled the book The Complete Angler, but I always like that
yeah.
idea of like the complete angler, meaning like
Mm-hmm.
I'll meet people that like are obsessed with spay fishing, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, have you ever gone bass fishing? Because you can go bass fishing. They're like, no, and I'm like,
Right, like a
okay, and to each
well-rounded,
their own.
kind
Don't get
of
me
done
wrong.
it all.
I always liked the idea of
Yeah.
like, hey, I want to know how to maybe not exactly master all these things, but I would like to know how to trout fish, bass fish, spay fish,
Yeah,
like
Me
dry
too.
fly, nymph,
Everything.
streamer, saltwater.
for
I
sure.
enjoy
Why
it.
not?
I kind of
Yeah.
enjoy it all,
Yeah.
and I really that's what I like doing.
Yeah.
I
Me too.
again, if you could start getting hyper obsessed with spay fishing, I'm not against it. I'm
Yeah.
just saying what I like about fly fishing is if there's a fish out there, I want to be able to try and at least present to it because I find
Yeah.
that interesting.
100%. Love it.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense then. We've got this podcast and we get excited about all kinds of fly fishing things.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Mitch's Fishies 5. This is the last 5 questions of the episode we ask every guest.
Sweet.
We're going to ask you them now. The first of Mitch's Fishies 5 is, what is your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick a favorite fish, what would it be?
My favorite fish is, again, this is mainly because they're probably when I hit tarpon, again, one of those species that might change, but steelhead for sure is
Nice.
and summer steelhead specifically, because summer steelhead,
Okay.
you're catching them. The summer steelhead is a lot more like an Atlantic salmon. You hear there's a lot of overlap in between the two, and they're very active, and you can catch them on really small flies, and they can catch them on dry flies, and but just
That's cool.
Right.
on the Deschutes River in the summertime, it's 95 degrees. You can be out there literally in your shorts, hooking a steelhead, and it's running across a giant river and doing a somersault. That's pretty hard
wild.
to beat.
I didn't think about that aspect of it. The
Yeah.
warmth of the Deschutes.
Yeah,
You're
it
just
is. It's a desert. That's the cool thing. It's literally in the
you're
desert.
just in a bathing suit. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so wild.
That's
Yeah, okay. I can dig that.
it won't. I having become obsessed with tarpon. That won't change.
No.
They're two very special,
Yeah.
amazing fish. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
You can be obsessed with both.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
We will allow it. If you could fish,
It'll just happen. So
if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, assuming it's going to be amazing fishing, best fishing ever, where would you go and why?
Oh man. I would go to Kamchatka.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that
course.
one's kind of a little bit off limits, although that one that was on. We did an episode with Will, and he is the guy on Kamchatka, and Will Blair, and it was just this epic. At the end of that episode, I was like, man, I need to go there because
That's a hell of an adventure.
they got everything: giant steelhead, giant rainbows. It's in the middle of Russia, and all sorts of cool. I've heard, the steelhead numbers have been up and down, and they're kind of down now. But I've heard that in that part of the world, they're still, they're totally wild native, so they're still doing fine. So that would be the place. I mean, definitely that's not your tropical place. There's tons of tropical stuff I would hit, but if I had to pick one, that would be the first one I'd come off. I'd also love to hit the Norway Atlantic salmon stuff and some of that epic. But there's just too many. I mean, you name, bowfin. Just like Rachel Finn again. Rachel Finn, this episode real quick, we go back.
Yeah.
We had her on the podcast. On my episodes, I beep out if there's cussing. If there's a certain amount, if it's less than 10, we'll beep it out just because it's kind of funny. Rachel Finn, I think, cussed like 200 times on the episode. And she was like, had the stogie. I don't know if you know Rachel, but she was just awesome. The hungry trout, right? And it was just, and I asked her, I said, Rachel, so what's your bucket list trip? And she's like, dude, what's this bucket list? Dude, the bucket list trip is in your backyard, man. It's like, it doesn't have to be these remote trips. You got your,
for sure.
And she's totally right. I mean, there's all these places, like you mentioned them, all these species that are right in your backyard, whether it's crappie or whatever, that are just epic. And so I guess I'll put that little, kind of highlight that. But I think Kamchatka, if I had to pick one.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those grand adventures are something to be said. But I feel her. I know what she's saying for sure. Okay, what is your best fishing memory, or one of your best fishing memories ever?
Ooh, best fishing memory, man. Can I go all steelhead on this? Is that bad if I talk all steelhead?
No, it's not bad at all. I mean,
sounds lovely.
We get it.
We did a steelhead trip. My first trip to the Skeena. And I hadn't spay cast before. This is one of my downfalls. My dad was against spay casting as growing up, so I didn't learn how to spay cast until much later.
Yeah.
So all these expert casters are out there now, but I'm still, kind of a moderate guy. But I picked up a spay rod and we floated the babbing into the remote canyon section, and it was just this.
Oh, cool.
People, it was this crazy trip. We had like locals up in Canada that gave us these like maps on a napkin, said, stay right or die in this rapid and stuff. And we went down to this crazy canyon, but we found this spot that was just epic. And I landed like 3 fish that were close to 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And one of them literally was like cartwheeling. And it was just this, it was called the Middle Earth is the part of the area. It was Middle Earth. And we were just in this area that none of us could believe it. In the middle of the Skeena system on the Babine River.
Yeah.
And it was like a 10-day remote float. And all just, we still talk about that, the guys, right? We just had a guys night and we still talk about that trip. And it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So that one sticks. There's a ton though. I mean, I just had one with again, I'll stick it. Maybe we'll stay with one because I just had an epic deer hunt with my family, which probably rivals that one. But yeah, that was good.
That's a great memory, dude. I mean, that's a hard one to beat for sure. I feel you on that one. Okay, number 4, Mitch's Fishies 5 is, why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing?
Ooh.
Why do you keep going back?
Man. These are definitely
these are hard hitting, dude.
Yeah, these are I love what you guys do here.
This is Mitchie, and these are his 5 questions.
Yeah.
These are hard hitting.
That's good. I mean, it's hard. This is really a hard question, because it is hard to nail down. There's so much. For me, I mean, it is kind of that calm place, with everything going on. You can just get out there and just, let it. I mean, when you're on a steelhead run and you're just, or whatever it is, you're in that place and nothing else. It is meditation, so I feel like health is one big part of it. Just, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, that's as much as anything. I mean, I've, like I said before, I love the river trips, but I think it's mental. It literally is mental and physical health, I'd say, if I didn't narrow it down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that is a good kind of all encompassing way to think about it for sure. Okay. Number 5, the last of the Mitch's Fishies 5 is, what fly pattern represents you best and why? If you were a fly, what would you be? Which pattern?
Man.
Canadian Tire Bumblebee?
Right. I'd be the tied down caddis.
Nice.
The tied down caddis. Old school.
Definitely never heard that one.
Yeah, not one many people know about. Definitely old school. You can swing it.
Okay. Yeah.
The cool thing about this pattern is there are some other, like the Tom Thumb is kind of looks like in a different form, but once it gets chewed up, the back
Yeah.
kind of breaks and it starts to get and it gets better and better. And then
Yeah.
and we use a little peacock on the body, but that caddis is so classic and just and I caught so many fish on it. I've caught so many trout, big trout on
Oh,
that
yeah.
fly.
Yeah.
I would be a tied down cast, no frills, just like it's didn't, the podcast is
Yeah.
not about me. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
either is that fly. It's just about being out there and having success.
Yeah.
Love it. Mitch, this
I love it.
would work really well here.
What?
This fly.
Oh, the tie down caddis.
The
Yeah,
tie down
100%.
caddis. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool pattern. You're right. It's almost like a caddis that just hasn't hatched properly or something. Eh?
Exactly.
Or wings are just kind of like a crippled pattern or something. Yeah,
totally. You're fishing it just in the kind of on the swing and the surface.
that is groovy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. We're gonna have to give that a.
So you guys haven't heard the tie down yet on the show?
Nope. That's the first
definitely
time.
not.
Nice.
No, definitely
you
not.
own the tie down caddis.
What's the most common? Is the most common that people have said has been what, the elk hair caddis?
Yes. Nope.
No.
One more guess.
Sure,
You're gonna get
Adam's parachute.
No, woolly bugger.
We've heard that a few times.
Of course, the woolly
bugger.
bugger.
With the woolly bugger.
Everybody's like, woolly bugger.
That's
Some people are like, I just like to catch a lot of fish.
Yeah.
I'm a woolly bugger.
It's not a bad answer. Like, it's true. You know?
Not a bad answer, but
I
still,
love the
come
woolly
on.
bugger.
Very fun. Yeah, man.
I'm loving that I got a unique original pattern. This is
You
great.
do. You've got
There's a few
one
people
and
that
only.
had a few unique ones that were really like, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you are that for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Our friend Chloe was like, we're like, where you be? And she's like, she had it like lined up. She was like, I'm a bitch creek. I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
We're like sick.
I'm like, awesome. That's an
Wow.
older pattern too. Which is
Yeah.
Classic.
Wicked, dude. That's all the 5 questions, and that is the podcast. What do you want to leave the people with? What words would you like to leave?
If people are living under a rock and they haven't heard of the Wet Fly Swing podcast, where can they find you?
Yes, just head out to wetflyswing.com and just press play, have a listen. And I always love to throw this out there. If you listen to it and you have an idea for an episode and you want me to put it together, it's an open door. If you send me a message, Dave at wetflyswing.com, I'll put that together. That's what I've been doing for a while now. So there you go, open door. But check it out, Wet Fly Swing. Listen wherever you listen to podcasts, and would love to hear from you and connect with anybody who's listening now.
Boom. There we go. And yeah, like we said, we'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. It's been a long time coming, and we're excited that we got the chance to chat.
It's awesome.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Yeah, keep doing.
I appreciate you as well.
Love
keep
your
doing
show.
what you're doing.
Definitely excited to keep in touch with you guys, and thanks for doing what you do.
Oh, hell yeah.
Right back at you.
All right, well, there we go. Dave Stewart from Wet Fly Swing Podcast coming at you live on the SoFly Airwaves 2024. What's up?
God damn.
What?
I was eating spaghetti squash.
Why?
I didn't realize you hit record. That's funny.
Of course I did. The record man. That was fun to talk about podcasts with Dave.
Yeah, man, I didn't realize you had so many other shows.
Yeah, he's the podcast man.
With the podcast plan.
Yeah, he's a busy dude. Like, just lots of irons in the firings. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's fun to like talk to someone else who's in the podcast, fly fishing specifically podcast space. Like, I don't think we've really talked to that many people who have like been that committed. You know what I mean? Like he said, we've been doing it for the same amount of time, really, and it's a long time to do it. So it's cool. It's cool to do that. It's cool to do that.
It's
cool
to do that.
It's cool to do that.
Cool
I was
to
gonna
do that.
I had something I was going to.
No, and he's very eloquent and like he's got cool ideas. I like that, despite you listen to his show, there is like tips and tricks, but it's cool hearing from him that he would, the stuff he likes the most is kind of like the, the fly fishing life kind of stuff, like the philosophy or,
That's my thing most of the time, I like that stuff because I just have always felt like you can get that education in so many places.
Yeah.
But to talk about people's lives, I mean, that's like the kind of stuff I like listening to on radio or podcasts or interviews is like, I don't know, just like the human stuff too, like just like hearing about someone's life growing up or whatever, and having the context that they're a fly angler and putting all those pieces together in your head as you listen. That's fun. I like hearing that stuff. So yeah, it's cool. I totally get it. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty well-rounded conversation. I was going to say, like, maybe we use this outro to talk about, you know, some more SoFly podcast stuff, but we really went back and forth with Dave because he is a podcast host as well. So he was asking us questions. We were asking him questions. It was questions
Questions
flowed.
flying all over the place.
Yeah, for real.
Well, it's
May
May
1st.
1st.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a little trip we've got coming up, cooking in the books
Cooking in the
at the end of the
book and-
month,
Yeah.
going up to Manitoulin. I've never been to Manitoulin Island.
I've never set foot on the island, and I am quite excited to do so. I've heard lots of good things about it. I've heard it's quite beautiful. The town is really nice, but we're not going to be near that stuff. We're going to be on like a pretty
on
what
our own
sounds
little
like
slice of heaven.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
like no power and stuff, which is cool.
Well, solar power.
Well, solar power, but no like outlets and stuff. Like it's no. We're just
Well, there
gonna
are
be on-
outlets.
No, they don't have power at his cottage.
Yeah, they have outlets. That's just solar powered.
Is it so? No, he didn't say there's like that kind of solar powered.
Yeah, it's like the roof has solar panels.
Oh, dude. Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what's he talking about charging batteries? We can charge batteries on that.
Oh, I think he's just worried about our cameras. No, there's like there's stuff that plugs in there.
Oh, well, okay. Well,
It's not like a shack. It's like a cottage.
Yeah, for sure. But I thought there was no power because remember we were talking the other day, like, oh, what are we gonna do? Well, I've got this and that. He's got
I think
outlets.
he's specifically worried about just the cameras.
But you could charge cameras off of the friggin' roof solar panel.
Oh no,
baby.
they'll suck those solar cells dry, baby.
Solar cells,
Yeah.
solar seals. It's gonna be fun, man.
Solar-
We're gonna go after some big pike. We're gonna go after some big muskie.
With Brian Still.
Brian
Stillwater fishing.
Stillwater fishing. Yes. And it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be like the first time of the year out on big water, chasing warm water fish.
Always
So
fun.
yeah, hell yeah, it's fun.
Big
Hell
old
yeah, it's
pack.
fun.
Hell yeah, it's fun, brother.
Obviously, this outro is we recorded this show. It's not May 1st. It's going to be May 1st when this comes out. The intro will be May 1st. So you're going to see a future version of ourselves introduce a past version of ourselves.
Imagine
But
just like missing a nose.
what happened? No, it's March
got
right now,
eaten
March 4th. So
in-
I'm stoked for May 1st because in between all of that time, there's also the opener of trout fishing here in Southern Ontario. So we're going to be having lots of great trout fishing before we're out chasing pike, brother.
Big time, buddy.
Yeah.
We got a whole
so-
month, my favorite month of trout fishing, which is May.
Yeah, so much fun. Yeah, I mean, it's the best. So,
It's the best.
yeah, it's the best fishing.
Hatches start starting.
What else we got coming up in May?
Nothing really, buddy.
Yeah, nothing yet, but
Nothing yet. I mean,
Yeah.
like not as of now. I mean, the Manitoulin trip's pretty big.
yeah. And that'll be the next show out, May 15th. You'll be able to hear the
No, they
Manitoulin
won't.
trip. Why not?
Not at all.
Why?
Because we're going May 30th.
Oh, right. Fuck, my
June
brain's all-
15th.
June 15th is going to be when you hear the show. Wow. This is crazy. Well, what else do we want to talk about from the past?
Nothing. I'm just looking forward. Like I like musing on May. May.
May
You know,
musings.
like May musings.
Amazing.
You know,
Yeah.
it's gonna. Oh, it's gonna be amazing
Oh,
to be
my
back on
God.
track. Like it's gonna be, dude. We're gonna have, man. This is gonna be our first full season with the raft.
Yeah.
So we get like. Here's what I hope for our May. I hope we can do
Okay.
a couple floats.
Yeah.
I hope we do a couple floats. Maybe a couple rivers around here.
Couple of rivers. Yeah.
I hope we get a few of them sweet draft line nights
Have a couple of
at
buds.
some of our local rivers. Do some exploring.
Yep.
Get some
Absolutely.
get that nice warm weather. Get Frankie back out on the river. She loves
There
the
you go.
river. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Always excited for that first dry fly sip.
Oh, dude.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's March. I'm stoked for that. I mean, today was beautiful in Toronto, but
Oh, it's crazy.
it made me think about spring and how happy we're going to be when this podcast comes out. Anyways, yeah. Bob's your
Yeah,
uncle.
Maybe we'll be doing our evening fishes by then.
Oh, we absolutely will be getting into.
We start thinking about
yeah.
tying some Hendricksons.
Yep. Yeah.
Huh?
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm going to Belize for 10 days in May.
Coming up in May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um.
Me and Roberto, we're leaving on.
Oh, that's
the
when the
drift-
trip is.
The Drift hosted trip. Yeah.
What are the dates?
We'll be gone the 12th, the 11th to the 18th.
No, I can't go then. I'm busy then.
Oh yeah, what you doing?
Yeah.
Mother's Day.
I can't make that. Yeah. Sorry, you got to tell Rob that. Thanks for the invite. But
Thanks for the invite.
What? This guy's crazy.
I'm here for the flight.
Here for the flight. Okay, well that's pretty sick. So you're going to. You're going to.
I'll be shooting mainly,
Belize.
but Rob keeps saying I'm going to fish, but I'm like, if I'm there to shoot, I'm going to shoot.
But
I'm not going to say no to stepping up on the bow.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting because we're going to be in San Pedro, which is where we were before.
Yeah.
But then we're going to Placentia, which is a different island.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'll get to see a whole different part of Belize, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm really curious because we ran into a ton of permit the first time around, and it wasn't peak season, and now it is. Like, I can't imagine how it's going to get even better, but allegedly it is. So it's going to be kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more about Belize fly fishing and haven't heard one of our last episodes, you can go give that a listen. It was a trip to Belize that you and Roberto took, and Mark and and David Adams. So go check that out. But so you got a trip to Belize.
May's about mayflies, buddy.
May's about mayflies and Manitoulin Island. Things that start with the MA. That's what May is about. Yeah, it's gonna be sick, man. I can't wait to go chase pike on big water. It's gonna be dope.
Hell yeah, it's gonna be so fun. So fun.
Summer back. Oh my god. Thank gosh.
God, summer's so much better.
Spring, summer is 1,000 times better than winter. Especially the winter we've had, which wasn't like a
boring
bad
winter. Oh,
it was a boring winter, and like you couldn't do much.
There's no snow. It was just rain the whole time.
Yeah, it's too bad. We've really got to do something.
Frankie was miserable. Hey, Frankie.
Yeah. I did see some people. I mean, I like watching, following along with our friend Mark Parr. Shout out to Mark Parr, who is a huge, super hardcore dude, and loves ice fishing. And
oh my god,
he had a heck of a good ice fishing season.
Good at it.
Yeah, he's a hardcore dude. Actually, I talked to Tyler Dunn today, and he was saying, yeah, Mark's going up to do some crazy adventure. I'm like, man, Mark, what a cool dude.
Oh, they know each other?
They were just ice fishing together. It's so funny.
Sick.
So they were ice fishing up north, but so I was following along, but I didn't have the ice fishing moods in me because it was such a weird winter. Like,
kind of hard when it barely went below zero.
And that too, and like, we went skiing the other day there. That was fun.
So fun.
And I was like, oh yeah, skiing's awesome. That was the first time I skied in so long. But again, we didn't have much snow this year either. So anyway, it was a weird winter, but spring is now here. Enjoy May. It's gonna be fun. Okay, well, why don't we just kind of put a little bow on this puppy and say thanks to Dave Stewart again for coming on the show, and thanks to everyone who has listened. Please go and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And if it's a good one, if it's a bad one, don't bother. All right. I know Dave said he likes getting those reviews. We don't. 5 stars are only. Got it? We'll send Yilma.
Or else.
And that is another episode. We'll send Idas out to take names. He's a scary guy, right? His long hair.
Yeah, he's terrifying, dude.
Tall, scary.
We'll send Frankie after you.
I was gonna say, you can't send Yilma. He's got those muscles, but he's not. He's not a fighting man.
No, we'll send Frankie.
Anyways.
Hey, Frankie.
Frankie, yeah.
Come here.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. That's it for me, Mitch Aldo.
Thanks, everybody. Great show. I really liked it. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Yay! Take care, everybody.
Comb your hair.